What's going on, everybody? Thank you for joining us. This is Costly Conversations. My name is Aaron. You can find me at Armed Atlas on Instagram and the other YouTube channel. Let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to Costly Conversations. I'm super excited because we have Trey with us today. Now, let's go ahead and bring him in and say hello to Trey. What's going on, Trey? You're live.
What's up? How's everybody doing? Oh, I don't know if you can see me or not. There we go. If you don't know, my name is Trey. I run the I'm Good Fan podcast. I'm super appreciative that I'm here today. I've been watching this dude for a while, so it's crazy that I'm finally on the show now.
Well, thank you so much, Trey. And just a quick order of business. If you are watching the show, if you've been watching and you appreciate this kind of content, the best way to support is to join up on Patreon. From $5 all the way up to however much you want to spend, you can support shows like this, specifically this show, Costly Conversations. And of course, we're trying out some new merch. So we're trying to see if it's any good. If you guys like this kind of stuff, let me know in the comments. Quick note, if you have a question for Trey or myself throughout this conversation, go ahead and type Q and then colon, and I'll be able to save those questions for the Q&A. If there's something on your mind that you just gotta fire in like right away, go ahead and shoot that in there. Just type Q and then colon, and I'll be able to save those questions to the side for when it's time for the Q&A. We'll be able to answer all those questions expeditiously. Now, on to the show. What is going on, man? It's good to have you on here, brother.
What's up, bro?
Man, I'm excited to have you on. I know you said it's an honor to be on. It's an honor to have you on. Thank you for coming on the show.
Man, I appreciate you having me. Like I said, this is dope. What you do is dope. Your platform is beyond what most people do right now. So I really appreciate you having me on.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you for your kind words. Don't ever want to let good, strong feedback like that go by the wayside. Thank you for saying that. But I just want to just jump right in, man. Let's jump right in. You, the host of the I'm Good Fan podcast, I've kind of known about you for a while. You know, we've communicated back and forth. I think what you're doing is really cool, especially the most recent episode. Let's talk about that. Because in the most recent episode, it's kind of been, for a lack of better terms, your return. I mean, that's the name of the episode, right?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I had to take a break from just everything, like just social media, podcasting, just life. Like not life, but just just being extra, and I had to do more of an internal focus. To make sure that I was right, both mentally and emotionally, physically, all that. Mostly mentally, because for a while it was a little shaky.
Yeah.
Not gonna lie. But when I decided to come back, it was mostly like at the behest of my therapist. Because she was like, "You built this cocoon around yourself to keep everything out.
Yeah.
You can't live like that." So it's time to bust out that cocoon, get back to life, get back to what you were doing so you can get yourself back on schedule. And I listened, and it worked. It very much so worked for me.
Absolutely. Now, in regards to the return, where did that name come from? The name of the most recent episode of your show, The Return. Because in the past it was other things, like I know one episode is called Blue Collar. This one's called The Return. Let's just jump into that really quick, and then we'll get into some more serious questions.
Honest answer. My favorite song is The Return of the Mac. And I was like, you know what? If I'm going to come back, I'm going to come back with a bang, right? I'm going to open the show with that song. In my opinion, it's the most popular song ever. Everybody knows that song. But then I was like, with the subject matter of the show, maybe not the best option, to start high and then immediately tank. Um, because the episode is a little not dark, but it's very personal. Um,
Yeah, I would say so. I would say it's extremely personal in the sense that for anybody who's paying attention, this is talking about you. This is talking about grief. This is talking about loss, maybe some depression, if you want to call it that. Definitely the truth about mental health.
mhm,
And so yeah, I respect your decision not to just jump right in with Return of the Mac. I mean, it's a dope song, but maybe not
mhm.
appropriate
Right.
for just the overall mood, you know. Um, but I know I had some questions specifically, kind of talking about early on in the podcast. You mentioned actually being working in law enforcement,
Mhm.
and you had an interaction with a homeless man that um, I was hurt when you described it. I was like, dang, it's like that though. It's like that.
Bro, you have no idea.
Yeah.
So,
Hmm.
uh, homeless individual, right? It was a simple call. It was a guy loitering. They just wanted him to leave. They didn't want nobody to go to jail. They didn't want nobody to get hurt. They just wanted him to leave. So I go to make him leave. Um, I just tell him like, hey man, you can't be here. You got to gather your stuff. You got to press on, right? Um, he didn't take it well, to say the least, and he starts berating me, calling me all kind of names, blah blah blah. Typically, I just let that stuff roll off my back like it's nothing. Because to me, it's just I inconvenienced this person, so clearly they're not happy with me. So they're gonna say these things, and that's cool, not a problem. Um, then he made a comment that basically said, because you wear that badge and that gun, you ain't no different. You just made it from the field to the house, which is a slave reference.
Yeah.
Um, because supposedly, uh, house slaves are treated better than field slaves, but at the end of the day, you're still a slave.
Right.
And in my mind, I'm like, yo, that's why would you say that to somebody? Because my job is, keeper of the peace, defender of the public. Like, not, I'm not a slave to anybody. It's like law enforcement with the choice. Could did something else if I wanted to. I had other options, but because of how I was brought up and the people around me, helping others in that capacity was like a path that was made easy for me.
Yeah.
And that was just a crazy statement, especially because like I'm not from the South. I'm originally from California, and I grew up in New York. Like, so to make a slave reference to someone who's not really in the know is kind of crazy. And two, um, later on in life, I found out that my lineage in this country did start with someone coming off of a boat.
Yeah.
So I'm like, it was hurtful because I'm like, man, you and I are on this. This is an older black male, and as far as I'm concerned, he and I are on the same team. This job that I lend my time to in exchange for money doesn't define me. Just a job. It's how you pay
Oh
the
man, I
bills.
love that. The job that
So
you lend your time to doesn't
yeah,
define you.
no, not at all. And that's a lot of things that people just don't understand. That the 9 to 5 is just a 9 to 5. It's not everything. It's just a place that you go because you live in a capitalist society. You got to pay money for things. I need money. They got money, so I do the job. They give me the money. It's real simple. I'm not out here trying to oppress people. Like
Yeah.
there's no, you can't live like that. No, you
Yeah.
can't. You can't live like that at all. So
No.
I'm just in my mind. I'm like, man, this is nuts. This is uncalled for, really. And that actually that ruined my shift because that was the second call that day. So it's like very beginning of the shift, and I'm like, man, this is nuts. This is nuts. And then it just stuck with me. I never let it go for a long time.
Yeah, brother. I mean, I I heard that, and like I mentioned earlier, I was personally hurt. I was like,
Yeah.
dang, this man who doesn't know a thing about you, knows
Mm.
nothing about you, would kind of associate you with more than just it's a job. I mean, clearly, there's a big conversation around statism and becoming kind of a cog in the machine. There's a huge
Right.
conversation around that. But for you, knowing that you know the good man that you are and your focus, that clearly I know that's hurtful. It's hurtful to me, and it's hurtful to a lot of people. But I suppose it sparked a question in you, didn't it, regarding kind of what it really means to do your job. And later on in the podcast, you kind of said that you started to hate the job more or less.
Yeah. Because well, like I said about the first thing, I'm not here to oppress anybody, but that became the job. Like, oh, oppressing people for really menial to no reason became the job. Because, the call comes in to dispatcher issues out officer, you go assess the situation, do what needs to be done. And people started to weaponize law enforcement against
Yeah.
other people for no real reason. And that's where my problem started because I would go to these calls. Man, I remember one. It was literally three black guys standing out in front of their building where they live in their neighborhood. And a woman who lived in the building across the street called and said that she swears to God. I never forget this because that's what the dispatcher said to me. She said she swears to God they're outside dealing dope. And I was like, okay, well, these are the most common dope dealers I've ever seen because I pulled up and nobody scattered, nobody ran, nobody reacted. Um, I talked to them, let them go. They weren't doing nothing wrong. They were just people standing outside. They live there. Like, it's not loitering. I'm where I live. Like, it became that over and over and over and over and over. And I'm like, man, this is not what I signed up for. This is not, like, the integrity behind the badge was gone for me.
Yeah. Wow.
Because
The
I
integrity
wasn't
behind the badge. Yeah.
I wasn't protecting the servant. I was harassing folks, like, because someone called about it, and I have to go at least see what's going on.
Now I know you said you felt like you were shifting from protecting your servant to harassing folks. What
Mm-hmm.
particular actions kept you up at night that you were put in a position to do?
Um, Mostly dealing with younger people, and by younger people, I would say an age range from like 16 to 22, um, because they aren't the most compliant people,
Yeah.
uh, especially if they don't understand the reason as to why they're being approached. And a lot of people are real shifty nowadays. They get real defensive. Their fight or flight is gone. Now it's just fight. Um, and so I oftentimes having to deal with young people, they would just assume I was there to do them wrong when really the first stage of my job is to assess the situation.
Yeah.
So I can't assess if as soon as I walk up on you, you one start swinging on me, or two, you start calling me all these kind of names. Of course, cell phone comes out there because everything gets recorded now. Um, and then you start to antagonize. And now, not only do I have to do my job, but I understand that optic. I understand what it looks like. And it can be something simple,
Yeah.
but now it's viewed as, oh, he's harassing me, blah, 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 just because I'm black, which was the worst one. I hated that. Because, like I said, we're on the same team here. Uh, but it just becomes, it became just so, like, this is law enforcement. This is, it's just harassment, honestly.
Yeah.
Um, and I think a lot of it started because I'll tell you about my first week. My first week on the job, a young man here in Charlotte named Keith Lamont Scott was killed by a police officer.
I remember that name.
Remember that?
Hmm.
And they started to tear the city apart immediately. No one knew exactly what happened except for those in the know. But to the public, it was black man killed by cop,
Yeah.
tear everything down, set everything on fire, and that's what it became. And it became like people were coming from out of town to come here to do harm.
That's
Um,
crazy.
and I'm like, I understand how it looks. Honestly, it shouldn't have happened. Um, but I'm like, if this is how it's gonna be, but I was prepared. I was prepared for it. So I'm like, you know what? This is how it's gonna be. This is how it's gonna be. The people will eventually calm back down. Everything will settle out, and it just never did that. It just escalated from there. Continual escalation from that point.
Yeah.
And I was just like, man, this is. Oop, maybe it's acting crazy. I'm like, man, this is not it. It's not it. And it became that every day. It became just, why am I doing this? Like, what did you call me here for? There's no reason for me to be here. Me
Mm-hmm.
being here escalates the situation because people see law enforcement as a show of force because we carry weapons,
Mm-hmm.
um, both lethal and non-lethal. So because they see that, it just becomes instantly worse. And sometimes my intervention made it worse. And so I'm starting to think, why am I doing this? Like, why? Do I need to do this? I don't need to do this. But because I was still stuck in the mindset of, I chose this job because I wanted to help. Or find a way to help. So you stick it out.
Now, you stuck it out for a while.
Yeah.
It started to eat at you.
6 years, to be
Six
exact.
years. That's a long time to do anything.
Yeah.
You stuck it out. You served your community 6 years. You did some things maybe you were not exactly comfortable with, but
Mhm.
nothing crazy or illegal. You would say.
No, 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 no.
I suppose the question would be like, what was that breaking point for you? Because I'm assuming you're not still with the job.
Oh, not at all. Absolutely not.
What was I guess the last straw for you to say like, you know what, my mental health is degrading. I need to do something different. And I know recently, or when you started the podcast, you started to have conversations with some of the people in a similar position as you, who the job
Hmm.
was degrading their ability to function per se.
Yeah. So my breaking point really actually, um, like aside from my personal battles with mental health, the on the job part that made me just as I was done with it was I had an interaction with uh, a higher up. We call them white shirts because they wear white shirts.
Right.
Um, but I had an interaction with a higher up, and it became I honestly started to feel like I wasn't my own man anymore. Like this was me. Like this job is all that I am. And in my mind, I'm like, nah, this is not it.
Wow.
This is not it. It was like, I won't say his name, but supervisor basically came to me about taking on an extra shift, which I always did all the time anyway. But that time I just couldn't do it. I had a personal matter to take care of. And it became well, if you can't dedicate yourself to the job, then we don't need you. And I was like, well, if you don't need me, bye. Because if you're gonna flat out tell me you don't need me, I'll go. Right, and that's fine. But then in the back of my mind, I'm like, yo, that's a wild thing to say for someone who's been at the job more than they've been in their own home in the last 6 years. Someone
Incredible.
who's worked doubles, worked 25-hour, 26-hour shifts. Like someone who's done that for you, but you have the craziest instincts and the things to say to me like as if you own me almost.
The audacity.
It's just like I'm like, nah, bro, this is not it.
No.
This is not it. That on top of I'm dealing with other personal matters, and it just became the perfect storm of you know what, step away, just step away because
Yeah.
like I said, this don't define me.
No.
That wasn't my life, just a job. It's gonna stay a job. It can be somebody else's job now. So
You know
I
what?
was like, yeah, all right.
It's interesting because I don't necessarily want you to get deep into this part of it, but unless you choose to, of course, the thin blue line, which is for those who, I guess, my quick assessment of it, basically like this code that only police walk this thin blue line, and there's like a brotherhood, like like this mesh network of people who they stick up for each other. They always have each other's back, and essentially it becomes a situation where even if something bad happens that is clearly wrong, illegal, immoral, we're going to give the cop a benefit of the doubt unless everyone collectively decides that this guy is a piece of trash. And kind of like with the Uvalde situation, 99% of cops were just like, this is garbage. I can't believe this happened. But some, even still, some retired guys were like, well, y'all don't know the situation and no one wants to die. And it's like, okay,
Kind of what you signed up
this
for
is the
though.
thin blue line.
But it's kind of what you signed up for, especially like in the Uvalde situation.
Yeah.
Um, like I've been in situations where like I've literally had to pep myself up to be like, you walk in, you walk out. That's what I kept telling myself. You walk in, you walk out. You walk in, you walk out. If you don't walk out, that's what you signed up for.
Yeah.
Like there's a reason we carry weapons and stuff. The job's dangerous. Like it's not the easiest thing to do. So me and my guys on my shift, we would always just have that talk. Like, look, back each other up, no matter what. Especially if it's a life or death situation. Because, like I said, I walked in, I'm walking out. I came in, I'm going home.
Yeah.
Even if I gotta go to the hospital first, I'm going home. Now, as far as like the thin blue line thing, to me, that's just seen as I think that's like a depending on the person type of situation.
Sure.
Because for me, all that really meant was I'm going to do everything I can to make sure the guys on my shift make it home. Like nobody's going anywhere alone. Nobody is running the risk of dying for just no reason. Even if it's a noise complaint, you're not going by yourself. Because you can knock on that door and I can never hear from you again.
That's true.
So,
Anything could happen.
right, anything can happen. I mean, I can't remember exactly where it was, but I remember watching a video. Female officer takes a noise complaint, knocks on the door. Guy opens the door, shotgun, right away.
Golly.
On a noise complaint,
A noise complaint.
a simple knock, hey, can you turn it down? And then you walk away. On a noise complaint. And now she never see her family ever again.
Right.
So the thin blue line for me really just meant, hey, I got to make sure my people on my shift are straight all the time. Like, because at the end of the day, we act and respond as a team. Like, we're
Yeah.
brothers on shift. Like, these are my guys. That's my bro. I'm going to treat him like my bro. You ride or die for him. Literally, like ride or die.
Yeah. I mean, when you're in a position like that, I can understand having to have that mentality. Especially, I mean, you look at guys who go overseas. You look at guys who have to deal with things domestically in a law enforcement mode, and I hope no one misunderstands me that I'm some sort of like anti law enforcement guy because I take issue with this thin blue line mentality when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to egregious acts. But kind of moving forward because I don't want us to get stuck in this one part of the conversation. I know you stayed on the job during the George Floyd situation.
Mm-hmm.
Was there a lady who also came up to you? I believe I remember that part in the episode where
Yeah,
a lady
it
came
was
up
a
to
younger
you.
black woman.
Yeah.
She came up to me, um, basically told me that I should be ashamed of myself for for wearing the badge, wearing the uniform, carrying carrying my tools of service, and doing the job, because basically she just put my blackness in question.
Yeah.
Um, because apparently black people can't be police officers. Um,
Guess not.
which is a wild statement. Sorry about that, bro. It's a wild statement to make.
Yeah.
So to me, I'm like, yo, why do I need to be ashamed? I'm here to help you. People forget that. People forget the majority of a police officer's life on the job is finding the wrongdoer in the situation, bringing them to justice.
Right. Now, um, as many people know on this show, we often talk about Second Amendment issues,
Mm-hmm.
being your first responder, self defense, and things like that. This conversation is not really geared towards that necessarily, but really
We
quickly,
can talk about it.
could we just address the concept of being your own first responder? I mean, as somebody who is literally a first responder for many years, and I'm gonna assume you ran upon a few issues that were more or less resolved, maybe unresolved in the sense where the person who had the issue, say if somebody was killed, somebody was stabbed, somebody was beat up, it's already happened. It's already over.
Mm. Yeah.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
Um. Well, it's funny you say that. This podcast was originally supposed to, like the non-GIF podcast, not your
Yeah,
show, was originally supposed to be a pro-black two-way show. Um,
that's funny.
actually, this is an original piece of non-GIF fan merch. Um, there's two-way on it. Because that's what it was supposed to be about. The
Yeah,
name came from a conversation I was having with about 4 or 5 young black guys. They were maybe between the ages of 18 and 21. They didn't understand the concept of procuring a firearm the legal way, because in their situations it's always been, shady, cash in hand, serial number scraped off, that kind of thing.
yeah,
So I told them, like, it's a real simple situation. First thing you need to do is keep yourself clean. Can't go to jail. Can't be a felon. Can't have these kind of issues going on in your life. Live as clean as you possibly can. Live right if you can,
yeah,
depending on what your definition of right is. Um, and I talk them through the steps. Here where I live in Mecklenburg County, it's real simple. You go to the sheriff's department, get a purchase permit, take that to your gun store, exchange that for the weapon, um, which is real simple. You know,
yeah,
not hard. But there have been a few situations where I roll up, man standing there with a weapon in hand, and that's all I see. I give you a perfect example. It was apartment complex pool party. Uh, apparently, at some point
Sorry, let me
in
pause you. Is the mic a little loose on your side? It's slightly muffled.
muffled.
Slightly.
I don't sound now.
Tap the mic. It's not in. It's not on.
No. It was 1 second, folks.
That sounds better.
Better now?
Yeah, it's way more clear.
Okay, cool.
Go ahead.
So like I said, apartment complex pool party. Apparently, there was a situation where two males had began fighting. Um, at some point, a male went to his vehicle, procured a weapon, came back. Um, the other male who had not procured a weapon literally fought for his life, right? Um, resulting in him taking the gun from the other individual. He didn't kill him because he realized that because he had procured his weapon, the other guy's unarmed, the situation could go left if he had shot and killed him. So we ran cameras back, and That's exactly what we saw. He procured the dude's weapon. He pointed it at him, and the dude ran off. So when I arrive, I see a guy with gun in hand. No one else is around. He doesn't give me any trouble. Doesn't even point it at me. He sits it down. I ask him what happened. He tells me he tells me exactly what went on, and I'm like, okay, well, first thing I said was, I'm glad you stopped where you stopped.
Yeah.
Because had you kept going, your life's in a tailspin now. Because even though he was the aggressor, now that you have the weapon, you're the aggressor.
Right.
Situation changes. So a lot of people, don't really understand that it can go left real fast, especially if you think that you're in the right when really sometimes you're not. Um,
So one question that I have, and thank you for sharing that story with us. One question that I have is when the young lady accused you of being some sort of killer cop, how dare you be an officer, especially as a black man? Something that I've considered, especially as you kind of look at situations across the U.S., some of the disparities, some of the questions, and some of the pain, is shouldn't more black and brown individuals, minorities, join the police force, especially in areas that are heavily minority, so that
yes.
we can kind of eliminate some of the that friction where it's like, oh, uh, it's a bunch of white dudes beating
Mm-hmm.
up on a bunch of minority, black, Latino, and otherwise kids, and that's just it is what it is. There's no cultural connection. There's no understanding amongst the people. There's just this rift that keeps getting bigger because there's socioeconomic things, and now you guys have a whole gang of state-sanctioned dudes who can come in and
Mm-hmm.
literally kill you, and if they can
Yes.
justify it, they'll get away with it.
Or even if they can't justify it, because sometimes a lot of it's not justified. A lot of it's like, what are you thinking? That's a bad shoot, but they get away.
Yeah,
Um, Now I'm not saying everybody should be locked up, but if you do wrong, should be a punishment in hand.
right.
But yes, I think the people who live in the community, not necessarily live in the community, people who look like the community should police the community because it makes things easier. It smooths out situations when someone who looks like me is the person who's there to help or save me, or the person who's there to reprimand me for doing wrong, or at least start the reprimanding process. Because you know, police don't assign jail terms and things like that. They just take you to the jail. After that, you're in their hands. But I honestly think that I've had situations like that. Because I tell you, most of my, well, the entirety of my shift that I worked with for every year except for one was all white except for me.
Yeah,
So they would have a situation that required me because they got there immediately. They getting cussed, yelled at, cracker, what you doing here? Blah 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 blah. So they would call me, and the second I pulled up, everything was smoothed out. Now it would be a problem because everyone would bum rush me to try to tell me exactly what happened because they'd rather talk to me than talk to them because they just assume because they showed up, I'm going to jail or they're gonna shoot me and get away with it or they're gonna brutalize me. I may be unrecognizable by the time they're done because a lot of people do fear that.
yeah,
Um, but I honestly do think more black and brown individuals should be policing the areas that they live in, that they're that the people are more comfortable with them being in. Um, just because it makes the process easier. It smooths everything out. It makes it so it's not so much hostility at the beginning point of the situation
yeah,
because those situations turn into conflicts, and then that's when things get bad. Doesn't need to be a conflict.
yeah.
A lot of times things can be handled with a conversation.
Well, I 100% agree, and there have been so many when you look at like body cams and stuff. There have been so many
Hmm.
situations where you see, police responding to somebody's walking around with a knife, speed up to the sidewalk 60 miles an hour, slam on brakes, barrel roll out. I'm exaggerating about the barrel roll, and
No,
then
you're not.
They see a
No, we're
little
not.
glint of something in the hand, guns out, drop the weapon.
Hmm.
It's actually a cell phone. They were recording. Cell phone doesn't get dropped, hands don't go up. People are confused because they were literally not in the wrong. So why would they feel like the police should be addressing them? Cell phone
Right.
doesn't get dropped, and all of a sudden, 20 rounds from
Hmm.
each of the officers, 60 rounds fired, and we're like, 60 rounds? Who
That's
reloaded?
the one
Like,
thing. That's the one thing I always hated is the, for lack of better words, overkill. Uh, that doesn't need to happen. Like
yeah,
you and I'm almost certain you've taken a self defense class. We've both taken the self defense classes. We've both
hmm
always told to deal with the threat until it's eliminated.
right.
Right.
Stop the threat.
That right. That doesn't mean mag dump into this individual twice.
Right.
Like there's no human walking around that needs to get mag dumped in twice,
It,
especially when the threat is not even really known.
right.
Because like in those situations where the cops are rolling up on somebody, you frighten this person now. So now their initial reaction is to run away from you or fight back.
Right.
Especially when like you said, you pulled up, slam on the brakes, hop out the car, gun out immediately, and all this person is doing walking down the sidewalk.
Right.
They have no clue what's going on.
There was and I've mentioned this before on the show. There was a situation in Baltimore where a police department was being investigated because they would see a group of kids, black kids,
Mm-hmm.
and they would be in their cruiser, speed up to the group, slam on brakes, and basically get out and see who ran and just chase them, creating a situation where there was no situation, no crime, nothing in
That's
progress. I mean, it's
how
that
long.
to me
How
that's
long did that
evil.
go on for?
A long time. This was like a common practice for this department. Now, obviously, if someone wants to fact check me on that, I take my lumps if I'm wrong. But I was listening to a news reporting program where they were reporting on this, and it was pretty bad. I think Baltimore PD they've struggled for a long time to do the right thing.
I can see why, if they're living like that. I
Yeah,
can definitely see why there's a struggle because that's insane. That's
yeah,
You're causing an issue where
hmm
there is no issue. You're harassing people. That's right back to my original point.
civil suit right there.
You're harassing folks.
Yeah, I
You're not
mean,
doing your job. You're harassing people. It's not what you're paid to do. You're paid to be seen, try to stop or prevent crimes. Crime does happen. You do your best at the scene of the crime to gather information so that when the investigators come in, they know what they're dealing with.
that's right.
You're not. That's. I'm so happy I don't have that job no more, bro. Like you have no idea. Like you have no idea, man. Like that's
No,
it's
I believe it. It
that's
sounds like a
crazy.
stressful job. I've worked in special needs and different things like that. I've worked with children who are like at risk, kids who have emotional and intellectual disabilities,
Right.
and when you have to go hands on with a kid who is liable to beat you with a chair, or
Mm.
a 14-year-old girl who's bigger than me. I'm 5'11", 230 on a good day. Like there's there was this one girl. She was bigger than me, and I was scared to
Okay.
deal with her because if she got
Right.
mad, you would hope that she would just go along with you when you had to escort her at the class, because
Right.
there's no fighting that.
Yeah.
And
That's why de-escalation has to be step one.
yeah, exactly,
Um,
and that's something that we really try to focus on, especially when dealing with kids who are becoming agitated. Is like, okay, we see they're getting agitated. Can we bring it down a step? Can we at least get them out the class before it becomes an issue and now other kids are at risk? Because we're in a classroom with like 10 other kids who are the same issue. Um,
right.
you don't want one of them to get hurt, because if they get hurt, they're fighting. Like there's no like, oh man,
Right.
it's all good. They didn't mean it. No, they're done. Anyways,
Yeah. That's. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I walked into situations where I thought I could talk everybody down, and uh, I don't know if you've ever seen like most radios. There's a little red button on top,
mhm,
and if you hit that button, it kills everybody else's radio traffic, and you become the primary. Right. You typically only hit that button if you need a way out fast. A few times I had to hit the button because I thought I could talk these people down. Nope, ain't no way. There's no way of talking them down.
They're not having
But
it.
I'm also not gonna kill anybody for no reason.
Right.
Like you can't pepper spray everybody because at some point there's people behind you. You spraying in front of you. One of them behind you gonna get the drop on you, and that's happened to me a few times. Um, but at the end of the day, I always try to de-escalate first. Now I've had to draw my weapon on people before, sure. I've had to use my baton on people, sure. Um, I think I maybe two use of forces, maybe. Um, as far as like non-lethal stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and one time I had to use my weapon, but I purposely didn't kill the person. They didn't need to die. They just need to stop doing what they were doing because it was a danger to me and them. And nothing else is working.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the OC spray don't work. Sometimes those tasers don't work.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if they're high or what. But sometimes they'll catch that taser, they'll dance a little bit, but they'll rip those barbs right out and come right back at you. Um,
Yeah. The technology is
which
not
is
perfect.
no, it's not. And I don't like using
Yeah.
those things anyway. We used to call them pocket defibrillators because if I hit you the wrong way and I stop your heart, I can't start it back up again.
Wow.
So I was like, I'd rather hit you with the OC spray or draw down on you and hope you stop than hit you with this. Because, I mean, it doesn't happen a lot, but it can happen.
Yeah.
And I already had a hard enough time doing the job. I don't think I could have lived with a death on my belt,
Yeah.
even if it was accidental.
That's trauma in itself, and you're already dealing
Yeah,
with a lot of mental health issues. And we're just going to pause really quickly to say thank you to everybody who's tuning in live right now. I know there's a few of you in the live audience, and of course, for those of you who are live, or even if you're listening to the replay on the podcast or YouTube, please go ahead and just hit the little share button. Send it out to people on Facebook if you still use Facebook. Send it out to a few friends on Instagram because of course, we want everybody to be able to hop in and experience the show live. And we just say thank you so much. And last but not least, go ahead, if you haven't clicked the little like button, click the like button because that just sends it out to a few more people so we can make sure to, let everybody come in and experience the show live. Thank you very much.
and click the bell so you know when he's doing the show.
That's that part too. So, man, I appreciate you talking about that a little bit. I know you know, it's one of those things where it's like, dang, like that was such a big part of your life for a long time. So I appreciate you
Yeah,
being vulnerable and kind of sharing that. That said, I know later on, I don't know if it was while you were still on the job or later on in your podcast, the I'm Good Fam podcast, you mentioned that you had a friend who was dealing with a secret addiction, substance abuse.
yeah. That was the back end of the job.
Yeah.
That was the personal part that I was dealing with, along with the unsavory supervisors.
Yeah.
Um, because with that situation, I was the only one who knew about his addiction. He when he told me about it, he made a point to say, "Please don't tell nobody. I'm only telling you because you my homie, you my bro. We've been down for a long time. Like you're not gonna judge me. That's
Yeah.
why I'm telling you." Because my immediate instinct wasn't judgment. My immediate instinct was, "Hey man, let's get you to rehab. Like don't worry about it. I'll pay for it. Let's get you to rehab."
Wow.
But he was a strong guy, so he felt he didn't need to go to rehab. He could beat it himself. Um, and he made several attempts. Because he honestly was addicted to heroin.
Yeah.
Um, and
Some
he was
strong
buying
stuff.
heroin. Yes, but he was buying heroin so potent that he could smoke it, which means it was almost pure. Um, so that stuff gets a grip on you, man.
Yeah.
Like it gets hold on you. And for him, it wasn't the use. It wasn't the continued use. It wasn't using it for fun. He ended up just kept using it because he realized I've used this for too long. If I make an attempt to stop, the withdrawals are going to tear my body up. And I remember one night he called me. He was like, "Hey, can you just come stay at my house for the night?" And I was like, "Something
Wow.
going on? Like, what's going on? Like, do I need to bring my friends? Like, people from my department, like, do I need to, something going on? He was like, no, 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 just come by. So I went by. He was like, I'm gonna be in my room. No matter what you hear, stay out here. If you hear the screaming stop, or the sound stop, or the moaning stop, or the pain stop, or whatever, call an ambulance. And I'm like, bro, what's going on? And he was like, I'm kicking it. I'm kicking it tonight. I'm not doing it no more. I'm done with it. And he laid there for hours, just crying out in agony because he felt like I can beat it. And come the morning time, he was like, man, I don't know if I could do this. And I was like, no, 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 you can do it. You can beat it. It's you started it. You can stop. Right? That was all my thing. Like, you started it. You can stop.
Yeah.
And I come to find out he had already used before he came and talked to me. And I was like, damn, man. I'm like, all right, well, I'm always here for you. Whatever you need, call me, text me, whatever. Like, even if I'm at work, I don't care about this job anymore. So if you need me, I'll come running. And to get off the heroin, he started doing meth. Don't know who told him to do that. Don't know why he did that. But he eventually did stop using heroin. But now he's up on meth. And I'm like, all right, bro, it's another challenge. Couldn't beat the first one. We can beat this one. All right? Like, and I just keep pushing the rehab thing, but then I was told by someone to stop pushing the rehab thing because it sounds like you're trying to force it on him. And his own man, this was his fight. He had to deal with it. But I kept telling him, like, yo, I'm in your corner. I'm here for you. And we would lose touch periodically.
You got kind of muffled there.
Telling me,
Yeah, there we go.
I'm good now?
Yes.
Okay. Um, we would lose touch. And then I would see him again, and you ever seen it's like a meme, it's called Faces of Meth? How it just
Mm-mm.
sort of tears your face up over time.
Well, that's a common stereotype that it'll make you ugly real quick.
Yeah, and it was doing that. It was just eating away at him, and I'm like, man, what can we do? How do we stop it? Like, what can I do for you? Like, you're not just a friend, like, you're my bro. Like,
Yeah.
we met on the job years before. Like, before I became a cop, he was my friend. So he was around through all of that. And I'm like, bro, you gotta, you gotta kick this shit. Like, it's not, it's not it. I don't even know what you're battling up against as to why you're using.
Right.
Um, and it just never stopped. It just never stopped. It just never stopped. And every time I saw him, he looked worse. He was already a thin guy, but he was just thinner, and he was wasting away. He wasn't eating, wasn't drinking water, juice, not even alcohol, nothing. He would just use and go to work, use and go to work. And I'm like, man, there's something we can do. There has to be something we can do.
How did he make it through the day at work? So addicted.
That's how he kept himself going. Like, he'd go to work high, he'd be at work high. The second he started to fade, he'd use again, which was dangerous because he drove a truck. So he's on the road, high out of his mind, with people around him, and that's the part I kept stressing to him. I was like, yo, just that part's not just dangerous for you. That's dangerous for everybody.
Yeah. I
Like,
mean, there's kids out here on the road, and my man's high as a
and he
kite.
got in like 2 or 3 accidents. Um, Luckily, the officers who dealt with him didn't. They just, I don't know if they didn't try or they just wanted to write the ticket and go. But he'd be high out of his mind, and nothing would be done about it.
Now, with that situation, knowing that he'd had run-ins with law enforcement, you even had encounters with him. do you feel, and because you can, get arrested for things like possession or
Hmm.
DUI, would you? I mean, maybe you would because he maybe would have still been alive, but would you have wanted to see him get arrested and maybe
Yes.
spend some time getting better?
Right.
Yeah,
Yes. Like the first time he didn't, and I knew the officer who stopped him. Me and him had words because I'm like, did you even look at the guy who was in the accident? Did you see anything funny about him? His
yeah,
mannerisms, how he was acting? None of that. Like you just gave him the ticket and dip.
just high on meth.
What's wrong with you? Like, do your job. Now, part of it is because that was my friend, so I'm a little biased on it. But I'm like, yo,
Right,
please, if you're doing that to him, who else you doing that to?
you're right. Just not even doing the job.
Like, you got to be better. Just be better on the job.
Yeah,
I honestly would have wished he would have got it arrested at least once. I would have bonded him out, obviously, but I'm like, at least it would have put him somewhere that he can't use for a few hours.
yeah,
So when they see that he's in there going crazy, what was wrong with him? Oh, he had a substance abuse problem. Well, let's get him to the infirmary, as opposed to leaving him in a cell. Let's get him somewhere he can get help.
yeah,
Because most judges, especially here, are very lenient.
yeah.
If they know you committed a crime, and that crime at some point in there was a substance used and you have an addiction, they'll say, we're going to sentence you to this. Not necessarily jail, but you're going to go get some help. You're going to save your own life before you lose it in this cell. And just never happened. And we had lost touch for a while. Then we started talking again, and I saw he was just getting worse and worse and worse. Um, and then I found out, he passed away. He overdosed because he had stopped using meth and was just straight fentanyl.
Which that stuff, just a drop,
Dangerous.
just a drop is all you need.
It's dangerous, bro. It's something else, man.
Yeah,
It absolutely is.
I'm
So
sorry. I'm
when I
sorry about your
found that
friend.
out, hmm,
I said I'm sorry about your friend.
I am too. But I mean, that's the unfortunate thing about life is that we choose the paths that we walk,
Yeah,
and he just didn't want to deviate from that path. Um,
yeah,
but when that happened, it was at the same time I'm interviewing former men and women of law enforcement, and I'm noticing they're having substance abuse problems as well. Um, as was I, because I was 100% alcoholic. Like
yeah.
I was drinking heavily.
Which
Like it started off,
people dismiss that because it's legal. They have Super Bowl ads for it. It's not a big deal. People do it socially.
yeah. So, but also I think it's a lot of up here as well,
Yeah,
because I told myself, I have a hard time sleeping, so I told myself I was doing it to go to sleep, right?
yeah,
Um, but then it just became if I wasn't in my patrol car, there was a bottle within arm's reach. Um, I never came to work drunk or anything like that, but if I was at home, drinking all day. If
yeah,
I'm off, don't let me have off day, because I probably won't even remember what I did that day. But I
yeah,
know when I wake up again, it's back to the bottle. And I started seeing, I can't live like this. I can't.
yeah,
Like I just had a friend pass away from an addiction problem. This is just as bad. It's just as bad on the body. It's just they sell it at the store,
yeah.
so it's okay.
On the sauce. And I know you said during that time, or was that before or after, you started to reach back out to your aunt
Hmm.
and find some sort of solace in those conversations and some direction and some wisdom.
Yeah. She wasn't always free. She's in the military, so
Okay.
well, she was. She recently retired. So Sometimes she'd be busy, and she's also a nurse, so she's at the hospital at least 12 hours a day. The rest of that, she's living life or taking care of her military duties.
Yeah.
Um, but she is like the spiritual and emotional anchor for when I say like my section of the family, meaning like me, my mother, which is her sister, and their younger brother. She was always there when I needed her, even when she was busy. She would never dismiss me. She would just tell me, wait a little bit and I'll get back to you. And she would. Um, but she's a very spiritual person. That's sort of what drives her. Is her connection between her and who she believes in. So she would often use that to sort of help put me in a better space. Um, Not so much being preachy, but more so like she just kept reminding me like you have a purpose, you have a task that you need to complete in this life, and you got to live to fulfill it.
Yeah.
Um, so she was just always, suggesting things. She would always suggest like, hey, instead of doing this, how about you do this today? How about you find something to occupy your time? How about you start going back to the gym? You shoot all the time. How about you start spending more time at the range? Maybe go to an outdoor range where, it takes you a time to get there and a time to get back. So it lessens the amount of time you have to do whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and that helped. It helped a lot. Um, it helped a whole lot. And because she's not that much older than me, but taking the advice of an elder and always works, you know? So that's what I did. I just started occupying my time with things that were self-serving to make me better. And podcasting was one of those things. Having the opportunity to just sit and talk with the homies about certain topics, it killed a bunch of time, and that was what was helping me was eating up of my time. If I don't have time to do this thing that's bad for me because I'm doing something else.
Something with purpose. Now, I do
Right.
want to talk to you about the therapeutic nature of what we do and how sometimes sometimes it's for the audience, but sometimes it's for you, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But I want to ask because I know in the podcast you'd mentioned that you had a relationship that was going really well for a time, and obviously we're all where we are for a reason. I'm sure you're happy where you are now, but do you feel like, and maybe the answer is yes, but at what point in this journey did you lose that relationship, and was it directly because of these issues, or was it maybe some other things that just came up?
A lot of it was because of the job situation. Um, Nobody wants to deal with you when you're grumpy all the time.
Right.
Nobody wants to deal with you when you've had a bad day. They don't want to catch that stray when you come home. When you come home and you're talking to them, because people do lash out, even if it's not intentional.
Sure.
They do lash out. Um, so a lot of it just became like just issues on the job, me bringing them home, uh, which is a pretty common thing, unfortunately, amongst law enforcement officials, because they often have strained relationships with spouses or with their children. I don't have any children, so the strained relationship with the spouse was definitely a job related thing. Also, like just being a generally unhappy person. Nobody wants to deal with that, and I completely understood that. So when it came to an end, it was cool because we're still really good friends. But
Yeah.
it's like, no, I get it. I understand because I started seeing how I was when I came home from work. Um, I'd walk in the house sluggish, angry, having to process with the 12 to 16 hours bullshit I dealt with before I came in here.
Yeah.
Um, so, I mean, yeah, and it's not like it just fell apart all together. It was a gradual thing. It was
Hmm.
over time, it became worse and worse and worse. And when things did, come to an end, it wasn't so much a, I hate you, get out of my life situation. It was more so, this isn't working for you, it's not working for me, but we were friends before. We can be friends again. And I'm like, yeah, because right now I needed a friend more than a spouse at that point.
Yeah.
I needed just a stand up person instead of being in a relationship with them.
Yeah, I mean that's the hard thing about relationships, marriage. I'm married, and this guy, oh shoot, what's his name? Awesome pastor out of Dallas. Now he's a podcaster. Cool dude.
I think I know what you're talking about.
And he, during a marriage conference that I went to, he said, marriage is a mirror. And, if you have a very serious relationship, oftentimes that can be similar, as in you will see the issues. You will see that your spouse or if you have a very strong relationship with your significant other, they will hold up a mirror and be like, you are aggressive. You are a bully. You are rude. You're not being straightforward. You're not being real. You're rude.
Mm-hmm.
You are toxic, to borrow the language from the kids. You
Yeah,
are
that's what my
manipulative.
girl did.
Yeah,
That's exactly what my ex. That's exactly what she did. But my issue was
the mic's
because
screwing
of
up
how
again.
I was feeling about everything.
There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Because of how I was feeling about everything, just life and job and all of that, I took what she was saying as her complaining or her trying to manipulate me or something like that, as opposed to the help she was trying to give me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that's a lot of the problem is that, especially when you're not happy with yourself, you're not about to let somebody else tell you about yourself.
That's
You
right.
know,
It's
like
unfortunate.
if I'm not happy with me, you're not about to sit here and tell me I'm mean or tell me I'm being a bully or tell me I'm being harsh, brash, whatever. I'm not trying to hear that.
Yeah,
But in reality,
it's the truth.
you need to listen. People need to listen.
Yeah.
Um, Especially if it's a person that you're with, which means you trust this person, you love this person. They're not out to do you wrong. They're out to help. But because you're so messed up, you don't see it as help.
All right. They
You
become the
see it as
enemy.
something else.
You start punching the mirror.
Exactly.
Now you're hurting yourself.
And that's the unfortunate part about what I was dealing with. I never took it to the point where I wanted to X myself out, but three of the people I talked to this time last year, hear me?
Yeah, just talk about that thing.
Okay. Um, Three of the people I talked to this time.
Plug it in. It's gone. Okay, there we go.
Are you good now?
Yeah, you said three of the people.
Okay. But yeah, three of the people I talked to last year don't exist anymore because they reached the point where they punched the mirror to it.
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay. Okay, cool. Um, I don't know if you heard what I said, but the three of the people I talked to last year are gone because they punched the mirror till it broke.
Wow.
And I'm happy I never reached that point, but it's a very common thing. It can happen. It does happen. Um, and it's super unfortunate. It really is. But people aren't perfect, unfortunately. So
That
even
hurts.
with help, even with help being there, they don't always take it.
Yeah,
Um, and that was me for a long time.
rejecting
Long
the
time.
help. I do want to ask about you seeking help right after we
Hmm.
ask about how podcasting is therapeutic. for you, or how, if it did help in any way. But because we're not getting a ton of questions, we'll go ahead and ask some of the questions that are popping up in the chat now.
Okay.
Randy, he said, what percentage of officers do you think are self-medicating due to job-related PTSD? Maybe there's not a particular percentage that you have in mind, but
I was going to use the department that I worked for as an answer, because I know specifically,
yeah,
close to 50%.
it's a lot.
Yeah. Now, I will say this: it's not always like hard stuff. A lot of the time, everybody smokes weed nowadays for the most part. I don't. Some people do. A lot of people I know do. But there have been times where I'm doing a vehicle inspection or whatever, especially when I was a supervisor. I would always do vehicle inspections. Make sure headlights is working, tires ain't bald, things like that. And I would find half smoked joints in the car. Or I'd find the grinder tucked under the seat and it's full of weed. And I'm like, hey man, what's going on here? Like, you're not gonna take this up the chain, but just tell me what's going on. And a lot of the times it'd be like, man, I'm stressed, I can't deal, blah blah blah. I didn't even want to be here today, but I'm like, I feel it. I was like, 100% feel it. We're gonna find another way around this.
Yeah.
But not this. And not here.
Right, because all it takes is one person who's not trying to have that conversation to ruin their career. They never work in this capacity again.
Ever.
They might get some sort of legal repercussions if they want to take it there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, most departments, they ruin your life for that.
Yeah.
Because all it takes is for you to make a mistake. And now it comes out, oh, he's high on the job. And somebody knew.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Oh, this PD has been allowing their people to get high on the job, on the devil's lettuce of all things.
And you know how the news works. They sensationalize everything. So now the story becomes entire department high at job. Instead of the one person that it was.
Chief of police high on a contact high gave us this statement. No,
and now we're drug dealers now instead of.
Yeah, for real. Like, and then everybody in the world is going to be like, dang, all the cases you guys have ever worked on, like serious murder cases, things like that. Now people are getting put in their appeals. It's like, geez.
Because all that's getting tossed. All of it's getting tossed.
Oh yeah.
All of it.
Oh yeah.
Every single bit of it.
Oh yeah. It's bad for business.
And now you're in their spot because you're going to jail.
And I heard cops don't do so well in jail, depending on where you go. What you do.
No, it's not. It's not good, especially when they find out. Because they find out before you get there.
Jeez.
Because somebody passed off some paperwork. So by the time you show up, they already know what you look like. They know you're going to Gen Pop. You'll be there maybe a week. And then they'll be calling your family telling them what happened.
So there was another question that just popped up. But are there any regular mental health trainings or resources that are available to officers regarding, I guess, the stress of the job?
Well, yeah. There are things available. But then again, at the end of the day, it's up to you to want to help yourself. You have to want to go. You have to need to talk to someone. Typically, it's in like your human resources department.
Yeah.
You have to go to want to talk to them and say, hey, life isn't so great. Can you help me out? And most people don't want to do that because they don't want people in their business, or they don't want to get judged, or they don't want any kind of repercussions, because you don't want to tell the department therapist that I've been having these thoughts, I keep hearing these voices, blah, 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 blah. And now the next thing you know, you're on traffic duty. Like you're doing church traffic, or you're sitting at a desk somewhere because they don't think you're safe for the job.
Right.
Even though they're not supposed to disclose that stuff to anybody else.
it's like there's like a punishment almost for being honest
Yeah,
and
yeah.
my I have plenty of family members, including like my immediate families, like brothers and sisters who have been in the military, currently serving, and I worry about them and for other siblings who want to go in, who if they're ever having a bad day or if they're dealing with a series of bad days or bad weeks or bad months, I mean, you've been there, you're not really allowed to admit that you're having a bad year
No.
or more than a bad day because, oh, you're having a mental health strain, concern, mental health issue, or you're having thoughts. What kind of thoughts? Oh, anything more than, my back hurts. And, they could discharge you if they want to.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure you can never own a firearm, all sorts of stuff. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I might be speaking a little bit above my understanding, but it's always been understood, and I've had some guys who have gone through some stuff, some guys who got back from overseas, Afghanistan, Iraq, who they could not talk about it because they knew they would not have a job because of the type of work they do. You can't be loose. You can't have any sort of loose screws per se, and not to
Mm-hmm.
be crass or disrespectful to people who are struggling with their mental health. You just can't. And I imagine it's similar based on what you just said, where maybe it's fine for a little bit, but the word gets out, they start telling people. If it's real bad, maybe you can speak to that better than I. But
Yeah, if it's like it's like me, I kept it to myself. If I went to seek help, I did it outside of the department. Um, because it's personal matter at that point.
mhm.
There's nothing they can do about it unless my therapist was to call up my job and say, "Hey, I was talking to Trevor. He's not doing too great. Um, told me he had a situation where blah 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 blah," and when I come back to work and I'm detailed out to some foot post somewhere
Right.
away from people.
Well, fortunately, when you go private, and this is common knowledge, unless you are literally a danger to yourself or others, and maybe therapists might assume that with your type of job that you're in,
Mm.
they can't say anything. It's
We're not
pretty much
supposed to
unlawful.
anyway.
They'll lose a license
Yeah.
potentially. That said, another question came in asking about regular evaluations to see if maybe you would need to use said resources. Are there mental health evaluations for police officers? I mean,
It's a
more than
series of
just the
questions.
initial.
It's just a series of questions. How you feeling today? You doing all right? That's pretty much it. That's pretty
So
much it. It
basically,
was
what I get when I go to work, hey, how you doing? You feeling okay? Yeah, okay, bye.
basically like that because they don't want you to say, "Well, here's what's going on." No, 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 no. Don't tell me that. Don't tell me
I
that.
mean, on a serious note, people do that in regular society. You see
Mm.
somebody you haven't talked to in a little bit. Oh man, how you doing? You better say good. God forbid you say, you know
Because they're not
what?
asking to know. It's just being
Right,
nice.
right. This is
Just-
this is just me being polite. Like, don't actually say anything other than doing all right, or I've had better days, but don't worry about me. It'll be all right. Like that's the hard part. That's the hard part.
yeah, but it was basically a series of questions that would they would consider an evaluation. Like I don't know. I mean, they were serious questions, but it was just questions. It wasn't
Yeah.
come and sit down and talk to somebody or none of that. It was just someone would come to you with a clipboard. They'd run down the questions, and they'd take that somewhere to somebody. Depending on how you answer those questions, later on in the day you'd be pulled or whatever. But other than that, it was just a series of questions.
Yeah. So we basically answered this already, but Cami Frank, who just popped in, thank you for your question, just asked if there is a stigma around using department resources, and that's why people don't use them. And you've more or less answered that, saying yes,
Yeah.
um, that if something did get out, that you would basically be moved to a different department or a
Mm-hmm.
different detail or job, and then it would just kind of derail your career, or at least the next few months, and kind of make your job
Hmm.
not fun. But thank you for that question. Um, Now, regarding the joys of podcasting, which is it's a
Hmm.
job. It's actually really stressful. If people don't know, I'm not
Yes.
complaining. It's one of the coolest jobs in the world. Just getting to sit down in front of a computer and or sit down in front of a human being and just have a conversation, record it, and then show it to my friends or the people that I meet online. I mean, that's cool. That's an awesome experience, especially if you're like you and I, and you genuinely enjoy being able to share. But I know for me, oftentimes it can be somewhat of an escape, and I'm admitting this out
Hmm.
loud. Maybe I shouldn't. And it can be kind of this thing where it's like, man, if I'm having a bad day, I don't have to worry about any of that. I'm just worried about this. I'm worried about the hard work that
Right.
goes into making sure that this is an enjoyable conversation for other people to listen to, but also
Right.
uh, um, make sure that you are able to share with me, and then maybe I share something with you, and it's just this. It's just this. None of that noise.
Right.
Just this. How is it for you?
Well, for me, when I started doing it, because I was doing it with a friend, it was really great. Um, my homie Eric, he like we sort of had like a meeting of the minds at some point because he wanted to do the same thing, and I'm like, bro, I want to do the same thing, and he was like, well, we don't. Why don't we just work together? And I'm like, shit, dude, why not? So we did, and it was great because one, I got to see the homie periodically. Two, we were just meeting great people, and it was just at random, uh, which what made it fun for me because I don't know these people, but we had a great conversation, absolutely great conversation. Perfect example. I, uh, me and Eric, we met this guy. His name was Riley. He is in that like the shoe reselling business.
Yeah.
Um, he's one of those resellers, that
Mm-hmm.
upcharge everything.
Yeah. Boys
But
in the
not him.
shoe game.
Yeah, but he does pretty well for himself. And us meeting him was out the blue, literal just happenstance, just out the blue, and that turned into one of our best episodes.
I bet. I
Just
mean,
sitting
that's
there talking with
interesting,
him.
right?
Yeah, just sitting there talking with him about. I bought a pair of shoes from him. Like
That's dope.
just off of how good the episode went. Like just talking to him was great because Eric was into vintage clothing, and for the most part, people who resell shoes, they're looking for older stuff, things that you can't find anymore. I think they refer to it as dead stock. Um, and so that's where those two clicked together. So and that it was just great. And I'm like, see, this is that's what I needed at the time. And I'm
Yeah.
like, we got to stick with this, especially because I was literally looking for an escape from my job. And I was like, if I can turn this into something, I'm going to work on this so I can get away from the other thing.
Yeah.
Um, and that's basically where I was at, and it was great, absolutely great. But even though I was happy doing this podcasting was only 3 or 4 hours out the day. I took another 20 hours to go, and I was still working that job. So, excuse me, it was just not working out as I thought. Um, but towards the end of like the first run of the podcast, things sort of evened out for me. And I mean, there's a bunch of episodes we did that haven't seen a lot of day. Probably won't. But just
Sorry. I
sitting
think
there
your hands
recording,
on the
talking
mic.
about it.
Yeah, I think it switched over to your phone, and your fingers covering the mic. That's what's happening. Gotcha. Yeah, I think I actually only have one episode that I haven't released, just because it just went kind of weird, and I'm not really gonna get into it, but it just didn't go the
I know
way.
what you're talking about.
Well, there you go.
I know.
You must have been
It
listening
was
for a
weird for me
while.
too.
Yeah,
It was very weird for me too.
yeah. So there, it's just interesting, kind of being in the situation where it's like, man, you're making new friends, and this is like I know you're an introvert, so one
Yeah,
of the best
for the
ways to
most part.
communicate with people is just kind of like in a one-on-one or a two-in-one setting. It's not a bunch of people around. You can have these conversations. You can share it out the world. You can give back to the world. You don't have to think about work. You don't have to think about
Right.
all the stuff that you had to deal with. And if you do think about work, you can make it a constructive thing and kind of add to the conversation. And I think there's something cool about that. Do you? And I think you already answered the question, but I'll ask again. Do you feel like that was therapeutic for you in a way that was really beneficial? Because I know you said eventually you had to stop doing the podcast because it was just kind of too much.
Absolutely, it was because for me, it was just so it didn't even though it is much so it is work, but it didn't feel like work.
Yeah,
And I think the part that helped me the most was having a friend there.
yeah,
It was because it was just you just kicking it with the homie. It wasn't nothing out of the ordinary. It's just a regular day, as far as I was concerned. For that portion of the day, it was just a regular day. I'm not having to deal with all the other crap. It's just me and him talking.
yeah.
Does it happen to be microphones and a computer and a boom and lights in the room?
That's awesome.
It's little extras that in your mind you make them go away. But other than that, it was just me and the homie. So it was
Yeah.
great.
So let's talk about, I suppose, the reason why you had to have a return is you left. You were going through some stuff. You quit your job.
Hmm.
I'm not sure if it was before or after. Um, but you left the police work. You left podcasting for a minute, and you came back, and it's better than it's ever been before. Just straight up, I like this new thing, way better. And
I appreciate it.
I just really appreciate it. If y'all have not heard the episode, go check it out. It's really deep, really raw, and it's maybe it's just me, but I got a lot out of it, and that's why I really wanted you on. It's because I'm like, yo, this we gotta break this down. We gotta talk about this. We need the director's cut commentary about everything that happened. Why'd you leave?
I might put out. I'm gonna cut you off. I might put out a longer version of it because that was like the third or fourth take. Because I kept having these like just moments of like realization.
Yeah,
And the worst thing that could possibly happen on the podcast is dead air. Um,
yeah.
and I had a lot of dead air. So I'm thinking I might cut that down and put out a longer version of it one day. Because realistically, I was talking to myself for like 4 hours. Um,
I understand that.
so
I've
yeah,
been there before. You're trying to record something and you realize you recorded for an hour. You got an hour's worth of footage for 3 minutes of conversation, and you're like, is this? Do I
right.
just suck at this? Is this
So I think I could cut it down to maybe 2.5 hours or so. But um,
yeah.
yeah, that along with this, I write a lot.
Really? Okay.
Um, on like I don't post a lot on my Instagram. There's maybe like 8 posts, and one of them was a promotion for this. um,
Yeah.
uh, but there's 4 posts. There's maybe 5 posts there that are excerpts from things that I've written.
I've
Just
I've
to
I've seen some stuff where it's like this is some sort of writing. Where is this from? Is this something he found somewhere? Is that he just thought it was deep? And I don't know how you're going to take this, but if someone looks at your Instagram and then has a deep conversation with you about more than just the weather, those are two different people. Have you
yeah,
noticed that?
yes,
Yeah. I don't know. I
it's
feel
like
like you should be yourself.
it's a dichotomy for sure.
Yeah. It's like there's some
Um,
stuff on there that's funny. There's some stuff on there that's kind of like sad boy meme vibes. There's some stuff on there that's like
yeah,
the typical dude bro stuff, and then it's like this is a different guy. This guy is like incredibly deep, very insightful. Like he's something more than what his social media would say he is.
mhm.
And I hope that's the same for everybody. I hope you're more than your social media, but
Well,
that's
yeah, that's the thing. Like for me, yeah, social media is great, but
yeah,
I live out here in the real world,
yeah,
so this is where I spend most of my time living, not on social media.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people know, I'm very much so into guns. Um, I hold my Second Amendment rights very deeply.
Yeah.
No one's ever seen my war chest
I don't know if
because
I've
I'm
seen a
not one to
single
post
gun
them
from
online.
you. Like, to be fair, which is fine. You don't have to see a man's guns to know he's to to respect the fact that he's about it. But
Exactly. Um, no one's ever seen the car I drive. No one's ever seen the house I live in. No one's ever seen anything personal to me unless I decide to show it.
yeah,
Um, or if I'm, if I deem it necessary. Because Instagram is Instagram, Twitter is Twitter. I'm on TikTok, but I don't really post. Those places are just for fun for me. Um, because I've always just been thinking it's like, you know, when I go away, it's not the people that's going to be there that are going to cry for me. It's the ones in the world, the ones that I know, the ones that see me every day, the ones that I get to speak to, the ones that I get to touch, the ones that I get to hug. Those
hmm
people are the ones that I need to be focusing my life on.
so
Because, like I said, when it's time for me to exit out, they're going to be the ones crying for me. They're going to be the ones carrying my casket,
that's
not
right.
social media folks.
You're absolutely correct. There's a lot of people who kind of disappear off social media. I've gone through my messages and I see accounts that are gone, whether it's deleted or Instagram took it down
Hmm.
because IG's gonna
Well,
IG.
that also happened to me. My account was deleted. I forgot to. I didn't really talk about that because I didn't care too much.
Right.
Um, yeah, my account got deleted like for no
I,
reason, and
I
I was like,
thought
damn.
so. I thought we had a conversation, then it was just gone. I was like, that's weird.
Yeah, yeah, because I'm like, someone texted me. They was like, "Yo, what you did?" And I was like, "Huh?" I was like, "What you mean?" Like Instagram's gone, and I was like, "Huh? Oh well." Didn't care that much. Like I'm like, okay, well that don't stop my day to day.
Right.
I don't really need
Well,
it that much. It's just one less app on my phone.
I'll say this, and the interesting thing is, you're absolutely right, but in this new wave of podcasting, because before when you were podcasting, I would say it was more about the others, more about kind of the relationship between you and your host, and then if somebody else is involved, or if we're talking about a specific situation. But this last episode was entirely personal. Was an entirely
Hmm.
sharing experience, vulnerability out the wazoo. How do you? I guess I'm trying to find the word. Where does that fall in the balance of like, oh, social media, that's just socials, podcasting? What is podcasting for you? Is that an opportunity to share with others? Is this
Yeah,
an extension of the
this,
family? Like, what
that's
is this?
that's my way of just because like I said I'm very much like I'm very much an introverted person.
Yeah.
Um, but I can sit here talking to this mic about a topic or whatever, and if I think it sounds good, it's going to go out. So, and with things going forward will be very personal. Everything from this point on is basically going to be specifically my thoughts and views on things, not so much as a social commentary,
Yeah.
but as a how does this affect me?
Because
Just in
that's
general in life.
interesting.
Like, for example, the next episode I put out, I've already got the title for it. It'll be titled "Artistic Integrity," um, because expression, especially through the arts, is very important to me. A lot of people don't know this, but I grew up playing instruments. Grew up playing the saxophone, um,
Which one?
alto saxophone.
Alto sax. Okay.
Hmm.
There you go.
I had an audition at a very prestigious school. Realized I wasn't as good as I thought I was, so it
Sometimes
didn't,
that happens.
didn't go too great. But the expression of being able to get out what's in here through the instrument was important. And like I have friends who are artists. They work in various mediums.
Hmm.
Their way of expressing themselves through those mediums is important to me because there's always something that we hold back, that we keep from everybody else. But when we do let it out, it's like indirectly through something. Um, Podcasting is it for me
Mm-hmm.
because I would never let these thoughts out unless I'm asked. But now that no one's asking me and I get to just speak of my own free will about it, I'm gonna let it out.
Now,
So
the return. We
yes,
spoke earlier, and there was mention of, or at least in the podcast at the return, you talked about seeking help,
yeah.
and you mentioned to me that podcasting was a way of acting out that help. Let's talk about that a
Mm.
little bit.
I guess the best way to put that would be, at least in my life, when people inadvertently want help or need help, they'll say it, but it's always a backhanded way. Um, and I feel like that way doesn't get you results at all. You gotta be very forward, especially in these times. Um, you have to be direct with what you want to say so that no one can misconstrue what you're saying, so that no other opinions can be formed on what you're saying. You got to be direct.
Yeah,
So the return was an absolute direct way of me saying I was down bad, bad. I needed help.
yeah.
I got the help. I'm on a different level right now because of that.
Box office, Hollywood. He's back.
To the fucking moon, bro. Like that's where I am right now.
I love it.
Um, so I think a lot of people, I think a lot of people assume you have to have certain things to do it. Really, you just need your phone.
Podcasting.
Press the record button on your phone and talk into it.
Yeah,
Get it out. You don't even gotta post it nowhere. Just get it out. Because when you hold it in, it gets worse. It festers. Like people used to always say, if you hold in your anger, you get a stomach ulcer or something like that. It's akin to that. Like you hold things in, they fester and they grow. But then when you let it out, it's detrimental to everybody, especially you.
yeah.
So I'm just of the thinking that you know what, got to get it out, get it out, and this is where I do it. It just happens to be on things that I think people will want to hear about.
I like it. I love it, and I'm glad that you decided to talk about it. Now, if anyone has any additional questions, fire them in right now because we're kind of getting to that point where we're going to wrap it up. That
Yeah.
said, in the conversation, you spoke about a specific help that you received. You received some counseling. You
Mm-hmm.
received therapy through an app,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is cool. I think it's cool that you were able to get help through a specific app. That said, I guess what is your message for those who maybe they're going through something like yourself, maybe something different. We all deal with different things. Maybe it's substance abuse, maybe it's loss, like you had to deal with the loss of your friend. And I wonder if you feel any sort of responsibility there, being that you knew about it, and did you have to work through that? But speak to that. Speak to the person who is struggling.
Well, when it comes to my friend who had the addiction, um, he passed away. Well, I found out in December. He had passed away 2 months prior,
Wow.
and I felt totally responsible for it because I could have made him go to rehab. I could have. It could have went poorly afterwards, but at least for the moment, he would have been clean. I could have taken his drugs from him. I had access to his house, um, but unfortunately, trust is not something I like to break with people, even if it's in that kind of situation. Um, so I didn't do it. Plus, also, I didn't want to go in there while he was high because I didn't want to see him that way. One, um, and two, being my friend, I made sure he had armaments to defend himself, and I didn't want to walk into a situation where I may have to defend myself against a high person. Um, so I felt totally responsible for that. But then I realized, like, man, I can't make myself keep feeling this way because we all have our own paths in life to walk. Who you meet along the way helps, but when I get to the end, it's just going to be me. So I got to make sure that along this path, I keep myself as best as I can while people who come along the way during the ride.
Yeah.
Because people come and go, unfortunately. So I just kept, having this mindset of, along with the therapist, they helped me with that you got to remember at the end of the day, I'm all I got. I have family, but like my uncle just passed away a couple of days ago.
Sorry.
People are gonna go.
Yeah.
People are gonna go. So I have to make sure I keep myself as best as I can until it's time for me to go.
Yeah.
So that's how I take things now.
Okay. Well, Trey, host of the podcast, Nah, I'm Good Fam. Thank you for joining us on this special presentation of Costly Conversations live on the YouTube. And of course, if you're listening on the podcast or the replay, thank you for joining us. Please share it out. Trey, how can people find you, brother?
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter, same username, _Trey, TRE, _Williams, common spelling, underscore after that. I have TikTok, but I don't really use it. In either of those places, Instagram or Twitter, there will be a link to the Now I'm Good Fan podcast. Click it if you like, if you want to listen. Not, I completely understand. But I hope you do. I hope that the return and any future episodes help you somehow.
Yeah.
Because I know it sounds self-serving, but they're all there to help me. So I hope that they can help you in any way. And if you need to reach out to anybody, feel free to shoot me a DM anywhere. Doesn't matter. Because I'd rather you talk about it with me than not with anybody else.
Yeah. Well, absolutely, they should listen to your episode, The Return. If they want to catch up on your backlog, that's up to them as well. But I'm especially excited about The Return, and of course, the future episodes where you're taking a deeper look at life through the lens of Trey in the Now I'm Good Fan podcast. I'm all for it. I'm excited for your next episode, talking about art and whatnot, and that's gonna be cool. That's gonna be cool. I'm glad we got a chance to learn some things about you, and let's go ahead and get out of here.